On Christmas Eve 2002, a pregnant woman disappeared from her home in Modesto, California. Her name was Laci Peterson. She was 8 months pregnant and preparing to welcome her first child, a baby boy she planned to name Connor. When her husband Scott Peterson reported her missing, it quickly became one of the most intense search efforts in the country. But within weeks, investigators began to suspect that the man who claimed to be searching for her, his wife, might actually know exactly what happened to her. Laci Peterson was known by friends and family as kind, warm, and full of life. She loved decorating her home, spending time with friends, and preparing for motherhood. She had been married to Scott Peterson since 1997. The couple had met while attending college in California and quickly fell in love. To outsiders, their life seemed comfortable and stable. They lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Modesto. Scott worked as a fertilizer salesman, while Laci had previously worked as a substitute teacher, before deciding to focus on preparing for their baby. As Christmas approached in 2002, Laci was excited. She was only weeks away from giving birth. The couple had already chosen the name Connor for their unborn son. Family members were preparing gifts and planning holiday gatherings. Everything appeared normal. But behind the scenes, their marriage was beginning to crack. Unknown to most of their friends and family, Scott Peterson had been living a double life. Just weeks before Laci disappeared, Scott had started an affair with a massage therapist named Amber Frey. The relationship quickly became serious, but Scott had told Amber something shocking. He claimed he had lost his wife and that he was a widower. In reality, Laci was still alive and pregnant at home. Amber had no idea she was involved with a married man whose wife would soon vanish. On the morning of December 24, 2002, Scott Peterson left his house to go fishing at the Barkley Marina. According to him, Laci stayed home and planned to take their dog for a walk and do some holiday baking. When Scott returned later that afternoon, he said something was wrong. Laci was gone. Her purse was still inside the house. Her car was still parked outside, but the house was empty. Scott called Laci's family and eventually reported her missing to the police. At first, investigators believed it might simply be a missing person case, but the circumstances quickly began to raise questions. Police began interviewing neighbors and searching the area around the Peterson home. Volunteers quickly joined the search. Within days, the disappearance became national news. Flyers with Laci's face appeared across California. Television crews arrived in Modesto to cover the story. Thousands of people hoped that the pregnant woman would be found alive. But as investigators looked deeper into Scott Peterson's life, troubling details began to emerge. Detectives discovered his affair with Amber Frey. When Amber learned that Scott's wife was actually missing, not dead, she contacted the police. Investigators then asked her to secretly record phone conversations with Scott. Those recordings would later become key evidence in the case. In the recorded phone calls, Scott continued pretending to Amber that he was a grieving widower. In one call, he even told her he was traveling in Europe. In reality, he was attending a candlelight vigil for his missing wife in California. The lies shocked investigators. Meanwhile, Scott's calm behavior during the investigation also raised suspicions. While volunteers desperately searched for Laci, some people felt Scott appeared strangely detached. Detectives also focused on Scott's fishing trip on the day Laci disappeared. The location of that trip near the San Francisco Bay would later become extremely important. Weeks passed with no sign of Laci Peterson. The case dominated headlines across the United States. News channels covered every new development. Public suspicion towards Scott continued to grow. Despite the pressure, investigators still had no body and no direct evidence of murder. The case remained a mystery. Then, in April 2003, everything changed. Near the shoreline of the San Francisco Bay, a passerby discovered the remains of a small infant. Soon after, another body was discovered nearby. DNA testing confirmed the tragic truth. The remains belonged to Laci Peterson and her unborn son, Connor. The discovery shocked the entire nation. Even more disturbing was the location where the bodies were found. It was extremely close to the same area where Scott Peterson had gone fishing months earlier. Just days after the discovery, police arrested Scott Peterson. When he was taken into custody, investigators noticed something unusual. He had dyed his hair and was carrying large amounts of cash, multiple cell phones, and identification belonging to his brother. Prosecutors later argued that he may have been preparing to flee. The trial of Scott Peterson began in 2004 and quickly became one of the most widely watched criminal trials in American history. Prosecutors argued that Scott murdered his pregnant wife because he wanted to escape his open marriage and continue his relationship with Amber Frey. They presented evidence including the affair, his lies about being a widower, the fishing trip, the location where the bodies were discovered. The defense argued that the case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence. But after months of testimony, the jury reached a decision. In November 2004, the jury found Scott Peterson guilty. He was convicted of first-degree murder for the death of Laci Peterson, second-degree murder for the death of their unborn son. The verdict closed one of the most tragic and controversial cases in American criminal history. The murder of Laci Peterson shocked the world. What appeared to be a normal marriage ended in unimaginable tragedy. Even today, the case continues to spark debate and discussion. But one question still lingers. How well can we ever truly know the people closest to us? This is the Case Vault TV, and sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who look completely innocent.